This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Bob is on the offensive. Eve gets educated in Texas. Barb is back. And Tim is host, and he's checking Facebook's math. They get an F.
Ooh.
I'm your host, Tim Farley, and this is Virtual Skeptics. A little bit late because my hardware decided to explode.
It was impressive.
Right before air. Everything was working great. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Tim.
Put the cameras on. There we go. Here we are. We are live. It is Wednesday night, and this is Virtual Skeptics. I'm your host. Once again, proving that Brian and I can no longer be on the show at the same time.
Yep.
And this is our panel for this week. We have, let's see, who do we have? We have Bob Blaskiewicz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor. We have Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities and contributor to Skepticality and Insight at Skeptic.com. We have Barbara Drescher, who is a former psychology instructor, blogger at ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to numerous skeptical projects, including Insight at Skeptic.com and The Odds Must Be Crazy. And me, I am Tim Farley. I blog at SkepTools, Insight at Skeptic.com. I'm on Skepticality, and I created What's the Harm, and and I apparently like to break things. Hi, everybody.
And we have Blue. We have Blue again.
We have Blue. He's asleep over there. Well, sort of asleep over there. Maybe he'll chime in.
You heard me say his name.
Yeah.
Psychic dog.
Blue! Oh.
Yeah, doesn't care.
He does not care. He's not a skeptic. So, if you're watching us live on Wednesday night, you can ask us questions in the YouTube comments, or you can ask on the Virtual Skeptics hashtag on Twitter, or using the Q&A app on Google+, and try to keep it a question, and we'll try to answer it if it's relevant. There are no TVs behind me, just a dog, so there's no TVs to look at, but we do have a trivia question this week. There's a fellow by the name of Charles Berlitz. Younger ones of you may never have heard of him, but his 101st birthday would be Saturday, and he was well known because his family ran a language school. You used to see ads all the time for Berlitz language courses, and you could get phrase books and all sorts of stuff. But he is known in the skeptic community for having written about a couple of skeptic topics, one in particular that he actually gave the name to. What are those topics? Either one of them. What did Charles Berlitz, the language teacher, also write about that is skeptic relevant? So that's our trivia question.
And if you can answer in another language, extra skeptic points.
Yeah, supposedly Charles Berlitz spoke 8 languages fluently. His family, his father founded the school, or his grandfather, I think, and they spoke multiple languages in the home, and probably got very confusing. All right, and let's see. The order is such that I am doing my topic first, aren't I? That's very confusing. So, I'm going to go right in and talk about my topic, which is the same as my topic for my blog, for those of you who read SkepTools on Monday, which is what I'm calling like inflation. I've talked about this before on the show, and it's a problem with Facebook. Facebook likes to inflate their own importance, and as a result, they like to see numbers, and they like to see numbers that are large, and so they tend to report numbers that are larger than you think they are. Okay, let me explain this. It's easier to go through an example. This is a massive blow up of the little buttons that appear underneath my own blog posts. And as you can see, this particular post was supposedly shared on Twitter 759 times and on Facebook 774 times. And that always struck me as a little bit odd that those numbers were close, because this particular post was all about Twitter. So you would think it would get shared more on Twitter. And sure enough, if you dig in, if you know a little bit about how Facebook works, and you actually dig in, there's what they call APIs, or application programming interfaces, where if you're a programmer, you can actually make sort of program calls to Facebook and ask it questions that only other programs can understand. And you can actually ask it, well, what is that number? Where is that 774 come from? And as it turns out, there's a site called sharedcount.com, and if you're interested in those numbers, and the numbers for other sites like LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+, if you want to know, like, where was this piece of content shared, you can go to sharedcount.com, and I should have had a screenshot of that, but it's just your basic big page with a box in the middle. You paste a URL in, and you get a report that looks like this. Oh, I wasn't putting the slide up there, was I? Sorry about that. Here's the report that you get when you do the shared count of that very same one that said 774 shares. And as you can see, it's actually 311 shares, less than half of what that button says. It says 311 shares, but there were 253 comments on those shares. So if you know how Facebook works, people post things and then people comment below it. It counts the shares, the posts, 311 of those, and then 253 comments underneath them, and then 210 times somebody clicked the like button on one of those. And the 774 is the total of all of that. Now, the reason this all came up was because I was noticing that the media has gotten very interested in viral crap lately, because there's so much of it. So, like, even the Washington Post runs a debunking column now, and there's all these fact-check sites. So whenever stuff gets out on Twitter, people are very interested in debunking it. But they always like to talk about, well, how much did this get shared? Why am I spending my time debunking it? And there was one last week caught my eye because it was this story, and it was your basic garden variety. Macaulay Culkin is dead. He's only 34. Isn't that terrible?
No,
It went the rounds. You know, it's your usual celebrity is dead hoax story. There's one every week, it seems. And the problem with this one was, if you look at those buttons there, it has these huge share numbers of, in the case of when I took this screenshot, 6 million shares, it would claim.
6 million? Yeah, I guess so, huh?
6,000K.
Yeah.
So it's claiming 6 million shares and 232K likes, which that seems a little odd right there, that there's fewer likes than shares. And there's only 23K shares on Twitter. So it's like, well, wait a minute. How did this thing get shared 6 million times on Facebook and only 23K on Twitter? Well, as it turns out, when you dig into the numbers with that same shared count site, the numbers aren't anywhere close to that. It was like 45K, 45,000 times on Facebook, 23,000 times on Twitter, which is still, you know, things like this should not be shared that much. But it's not 6 million. And yet there were people in the media on theweek.com and on BuzzFeed.com that were just looking at these buttons. And frankly, I think that button is just a lie. You know, this is a viral news site. Why would you, if you don't trust the news story, why would you trust the number in the button, right? I can make a button that says whatever number I want, right? There's no reason that says just because that has a Facebook logo on it that's a correct number from Facebook.
That's a good point.
It's a little piece of programming code, and it could be grabbing a random number out of a bucket somewhere. You know, who knows?
Tim, I just had an idea about how to boost our numbers.
So I had noticed this, and I had pointed this out. There's a new site called emergent.info that's pretty cool. That's a news researcher and journalist up in Canada actually researching how fast these things get shared and how fast the debunks come out and whether the debunks get shared more or less than the original one, and just kind of doing some basic number research on this. So he's created this site, and I talked about it a few episodes back, but I had noticed that his Facebook numbers seemed really, really exaggerated. And it's because of this same syndrome, and I pointed it out to him, and he's going to have his programmer fix it. But basically, it's just something to look out for. Just look out for the fact that Facebook is exaggerating these numbers. Now, in Facebook's defense, I think their standard button is trying to give you an idea of how much people interact with that content.
Well, then it should say so.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I mean, a lot of times you just get, there are different versions of the buttons, and some of them say like on them, some of them just have the Facebook logo and a number. So sometimes it's not clear what they're saying, but sometimes it's quite clear that the number is wrong. Like this 232K number on this button is still an exaggeration because it says like right there, and there are not 232K likes for this, or there weren't at the time that I took this screenshot.
So Tim, are there any accurate measures or displays of how many times something has been shared? Like if you look at a post on Facebook,
right,
where it says how many times it's been shared, like underneath it,
yeah,
is that correct?
Well, if you do the shared count thing, it's calling the Facebook API. So in theory, that shared count should be correct. That should be the total number of shares. But even that really doesn't tell you that much, because just because someone shared it doesn't mean anyone saw it.
That's
right?
true. But I would assume that if people are sharing it, it's because they...
Right. It means there are some gullible people. It doesn't necessarily mean...
I was actually thinking selfishly because, we see those on our own posts when, if you have a blog or, an insight, if something is shared by Skeptic Society, there's always a shared thing on their post of it.
Right.
On any page post, you see that.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to know if that's accurate.
Well, it's going to be, in most cases, it's going to be that aggregate number, unless somebody's done some extra effort to make the button just show the share count.
So it should, but it's not a button though. It's like, I'm talking about the things that are on Facebook that are right underneath the post of it.
Yeah, that's only going to be people who shared it from that copy.
Really?
Yeah. So if you post something and it says,
it's not the number of comments on it, it's the number of people who shared it from that share.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're part of the tree of, but these numbers that you get from the API, in theory, should be all over Facebook. Now, even then, you're having to trust Facebook, so I don't know. How much do you trust Mark Zuckerberg? It seems like it's in their...
This much?
On the one hand, it's in their benefit to, it seems to be in their interest to exaggerate these numbers. On the other hand, people can tell from other things, like if you run a website, you can tell when people are coming from Facebook. Mm-hmm. So if they were wildly exaggerating them, people would be able to tell that, well, Facebook claims it was shared 9 million times, but I only got 55 clicks, so that's not right. But there's other stuff that goes on in Facebook. If you run a Facebook page now, and you haven't had the benefit of getting 3 million likes on that page, you know that the number of views that page gets, if you run a page, you get some extra little stats that shows how many people actually saw that post, because you're the owner of the page. And those are way down recently because Facebook has been tweaking the algorithm and deciding whether or not things are relevant in weird ways that only they understand. So, like, for instance, I have a Skeptic History page that I post my Skeptic History stuff, and I try to get people to like it. And most of the time, unless I personally share it, it'll say, 2 people saw this post, 1 person saw this post, and it's like, why do I even have this page?
I have a group for my son's lacrosse team, and we have a website that is set up with a WordPress blog that we use to email all of the parents and players, and every post gets emailed, so the post remains on the page. Well, it also gets tweeted out on the Twitter account, and it gets posted to this Facebook group. Problem is, the only person in the Facebook group that gets every single, or can see every single post when they look in the group is me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
My husband still has trouble seeing the posts. We had one person who didn't see anything, and then she posted to the page herself, and then all of a sudden she could see everything.
Yeah.
My husband tried that. It didn't work.
Yeah, they use all these obtuse and undocumented ways to decide whether or not you are actually, even though you like that page, whether or not you're interested in that page, and whether or not to show you the stuff out of that page. You would think, like on Twitter, if you follow someone, their stuff shows up in your stream, and it's just a done deal. Although Twitter's starting to evolve off that now, and starting to put stuff in people's stream they didn't ask for. But Facebook has always had this bizarre algorithmic thing where it's like, well, most people like and are friends with too many people to see everything, so we're going to use this magical computer algorithm to decide the best things. And they tweak it every so often, and people get angry at them all the time. The one thing you can do to work against that is if there is a page that you absolutely want to see every post, like it's your favorite nonprofit or whatever it is, something that you want to see, go to that page, and if you click and hold on the like button, there's a drop down that you get, and it says, and there's a little thing in the drop down that says turn on notifications.
Even that, Tim, I'm telling you, even that
doesn't work?
Even that goes wonky. I've got people on my, that I know are listed that I'm supposed to notifications for.
Have you tried turning it off and back on?
Yes.
I'm out of ideas.
Including my
Pull the
husband.
plug out of the wall.
That I sometimes don't get the notifications for, and my husband's one of those people. It's really annoying, and part of it is my husband doesn't use Facebook all that much, so he doesn't post a lot.
Right.
So it actually pulls him out of my notifications sometimes. It's really irritating. And that's a problem there are people that will use Facebook to communicate with groups. There are classrooms using Facebook to communicate.
Yeah.
I mean, there are schools that use it. There are things like that. And if it's not reliable like that, I mean, if you're expecting all of your students to get that message, it can't be used that way. It
is a pain, and even beyond it not being reliable, just it not working the same way on Tuesday that it works on Thursday because of an algorithm change. There's a lot of people who are doing there's a guy I follow on Twitter, Nick Diakopoulos, and he does a lot of research into, how much our algorithms dominating our lives now. Like the algorithm that Google News uses to surface news, and the algorithm that Google uses to decide what website is going to be #1 in the rankings, and the Facebook algorithm. All these algorithms are essentially secret, but they control what we see, and they're essentially the editors of our, they are playing the role that the editor of the newspaper used to play 50 years ago. In deciding what everyone sees.
Only they're doing it somewhat blind.
Oh yeah, it's totally blind. You don't know what decisions that algorithm made or why it's making it.
But I mean, I think the algorithms themselves, I mean, they don't know the individuals. They don't know what.
Right.
So they're doing it blind too.
Yeah. I mean, they're using, you clicked on this, you touched this, you talked to this person 3 days ago, who knows what all they're using. But
so we have a question. Are there ever undercounts?
Are there ever undercounts?
Mm-hmm.
And the Facebook buttons?
Or is it like a supermarket that always overcharges and never undercharges?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any way to even determine whether those numbers are correct, because you would have to have access to the entire Facebook data set, which only Facebook has, right? So how would anybody determine?
And the NSA.
Yeah, and the NSA. I mean, I suppose you could do some experiments by posting stuff in weird ways that you knew where it was and you knew everyone who was interacting with that content and then tracking it as it went. And I think Facebook has given some deep-level access to the data to, like, data science researchers to, help them write papers on how this stuff works. But anyway, I've talked way too long on this. So the bottom line is, if somebody tells you that some hoax or something was shared 1,000,000 times on Facebook, go check. Don't trust
You tell them to go to hell. You tell them to go right to hell.
I mean, usually it was shared a bunch, but a lot of times the number you get told is either somewhere between 2 and 110 times too large, is from what I've seen. I haven't done exhaustive research, but 2 to 8 times exaggeration is very common. Okay, so moving on along, who is next in our cavalcade of excitement?
I believe that would be me.
Oh, yes, it's Barb, and she's talking about Jesus. Watch out, Eve. Barb's talking about Jesus.
Hey, man.
I'm doing something better. I'm doing Texas. I think Texas trumps.
Close enough. Same day. I was missing Jesus, so I thought I'd go looking for him. Yeah, I don't remember why I decided to do this, but I decided that I needed to update my collection of pareidolia, and so I did a little search for looks like Jesus, and sure enough, just about any day you do a search on looks like Jesus, you're going to come up with something, and I did. Yesterday, a man in the Poconos saw Jesus in his chicken dinner. There's a slide there. There's a picture.
Oh my God! That's
looks like
That's Jesus.
like Jesus. Looks like Jesus to me. That's actually looks more like Jesus than most of the stuff that I've seen that supposedly looks like Jesus.
He might have an eye patch.
You think? I think that's
An
just
eye
a
patch?
shadow
It's a beetle.
with a beard.
Yeah.
Like a Sergeant Pepper era beetle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's not wearing glasses though. Can't be John Lennon. So, Ernesto Hernandez found this in his chicken. It's just a little piece, but and then they put it in the refrigerator and it shrunk a little bit.
The shrunken head of Jesus?
Yes.
Shrinkage can happen to any man,
Wow.
even Jesus.
What I thought was really, really cute about this story is he was convinced that this was a sign. He actually saw Jesus in a cloud the other day. I don't know, a few days ago. I don't remember what he said. Next slide. And in order to make sure that we could see the Jesus in the cloud, he circled it. It's the whole freaking picture. So I guess we needed that circle to see it.
What? I don't
I
see.
see Satan.
You have to turn your head this way, Bob.
Oh, wait, I see it. But I also see Satan.
I'm still on.
Yes, Satan.
Yeah.
Faces could be, whenever it's a face, it could be any number of people. Now, the chicken was definitely Jesus. He has a beard, he's got long hair, everything, right? This one, yeah, it's just a face. I don't know.
Well, I see another face within the Jesus face.
I don't see
His eye?
anything at all.
Yeah, I'm not getting it at all.
You don't see I see it. His head's tilted like this.
Yeah.
And the mouth is kind of,
You can even see an iris.
nose and eyes are perfect. Yeah, I can see an iris. I think the nose and eyes are
You
good.
are high and higher.
Well, yeah,
Maybe
but
you're turning the wrong
that's
way, Bob. Try turning the other way. Do you see it now?
No. No, I
And
don't.
they even drew a circle around it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that
I
was,
want to see. I usually see these things.
yeah. Well,
Oh, they usually talk to me.
that wasn't the only sighting of Jesus. You'll have more chances. So, a few days before that, there was a sighting of Jesus in a tree trunk in Iowa. That's the next slide. It's the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus. So Jesus is a baby.
The baby Jesus?
Still Jesus.
Did those flowers
Those
spontaneously?
flowers look really, really good.
What was that?
The flowers are convincing. I wouldn't mistake those for flowers.
Yeah.
So what is that, owl shit?
Actually, it looks like a scar on the tree, maybe a lightning strike or a branch that was pulled off. I don't know.
Well, Jesus could do that.
Jesus could do that. You're right.
And we just don't have Brian here to tell us, "Oh shit, Jesus is the name of my blah 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 band."
That's a great name for a band, actually. And then there was Jesus last month in Smoke. Next.
Well, you know what they say: where there's smoke, there's Jesus.
Yes, there is.
Angry
See
Jesus.
the face of Jesus? This smoke appeared in a video, actually, of a house fire that a witness took. And the video coincides with somebody saying, "There's someone still in the building."
Oh, nice.
While a guy carries this big man out. And it's really kind of interesting because in the video, the guy that's being carried doesn't look like he needed to be carried. But regardless, he was being carried out of a burning building. Kudos for the guy who carried him out. But a neighbor in the video, and it's an NBC News video, says, "You see Jesus in the smoke and the person gets saved? That right there is not a coincidence."
Okay.
Well, yeah, it is. Especially
I'm not seeing this one either. Why are you picking the hard cheese die?
Well, that's
this one I can see better if you look at it on the icon version, Bob. Look on the small
you just
version.
kind of pull back really far and look at,
It kind of looks like God in the Monty Python
It
sketches.
does kind of look like,
Well, I can see a face, but it doesn't look like Jesus or anyone. It just looks like it looks like an ogre. Is this an ogre?
Yeah, I can sort of see this.
Ogre,
Yeah.
the thumbnail does look more like a person though. But I think the see Jesus in the smoke part is pretty questionable, and so is the person gets saved part. I mean, in the video you can see that they show the place where the fire was. You know, there isn't that much damage. I don't know if he was like saved from a burning building just because he happened to be in there and some guy ran in and carried him out. I don't know about that, but regardless, I thought that they interviewed a priest about it. They actually show him watching the video, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that does kind of look like, yeah, it's very cute." But what I thought he had to say about it was really sweet. He said, "For me..."
Was the person carrying the guy out named Christopher?
I don't think so, but can I finish the thought?
Sorry.
Because that was totally unrelated to what I was just saying.
Sorry.
The priest, there was a priest. You're like 5 minutes ago. The priest said, "But for me, the true face of God, the true image of God, was the man carrying his neighbor out on his shoulder." And I thought that was very...
Aww.
Of course, for me, I think it's a simple demonstration of what human beings are capable of, and it's very sweet and all, and it's beautiful, but I don't need God to explain it. I don't know why anybody would want to give God that glory when it was clearly a human being who did it, but there you go. Anyway, my favorite, though, was back in August, a HuffPo blogger named Fiona Finn took a picture over Cape Coral, Florida, of God in the clouds, and he looks pissed. Is that me?
Oh no, that's an angel with I think the flaming swords on the other side of him, but
I don't know.
Isn't that Hunchback Jesus? Oh, wings. Okay, never mind.
I thought it was really interesting. When I looked for the original post, I read Fiona Finn's little mini bio on her byline, and I found it really difficult to take anything that she has to say seriously, because her bio is a spiritual girl, mother, cancer survivor, author, parodist, And keynote
What?
speaker.
Keynote speaker. Not just a speaker, but she's a keynote speaker.
Yeah, apparently. That's it, because that's an occupation.
What was before keynote speaker?
It was. I'm sorry. What? Parodist.
Oh. Ha.
Parody of
Including writing
herself.
parodic biographies, apparently.
Yeah. So that's actually it. That's all I have.
Huh.
That's what I got for you.
Good. This week in pareidolia.
E-I-E-I-O.
Let's see. Did they compare pics to Jesus' mugshot? I don't know what that's a reference to. What am I doing here? I'm clicking the wrong. Sorry, I'm trying to clear off some Q&As and I'm using the wrong screen.
Did you get rid of all the questions?
No. Alex was asking, did they compare the pics to Jesus' mugshot? I guess that's a reference to a previous Jesus picture.
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, and he also suggested that the cloud picture looks like the person is actually urinating outside.
I thought it looked like, you know, the guys, the big things that are up on the top of the service stations, you know, where they fix cars in the Midwest, and he's carrying a wrench.
Big balloon.
You know? Yeah.
Craig says one of them looks like Snake Plissken to him.
Which one?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't keeping track.
And which snake?
Yeah.
In the original or the sequel?
Oh, good question. I don't know. All right, so I think we're done with that. So Eve is up next, right? And Eve is talking about Texas education.
Yep. So the Texas School Board, seen here, if you could bring up my slide.
Okay.
I was wondering what that picture was for.
I should stop for a moment. Some of our viewers may find the stereotyped, so I do want to apologize to all slack-jawed yokels for in any way comparing them to the Texas School Board. At any rate, in 2010, the Texas School Board decided that Texas's textbooks, particularly social studies textbooks, were too apparently. So heroically, factual.
Yeah, you're cut out for me. I don't know.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Just go slow. You'll be good.
Okay. So heroically leaping in to redress this unfortunate bias toward reality, Texas education officials 4 years ago instituted TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which is the state standard for public schools in Texas, and which sets the curriculum for every course. At the end of the school year, students take a standardized test based on TEKS called the State of Texas Assessments of Academic Readiness. Now, naturally, Texas needs textbooks to meet these standards. A whole raft of books and other materials will come up for a final vote before the board on Friday. Yesterday, actually, the board almost, but not quite, voted to grant preliminary approval for the materials, but ultimately they delayed the decision. All 5 Democrats voted no, 5 Republicans voted yes, 4 Republicans abstained, and 1 member was absent. One problem is that the publishers can actually revise materials in response to public criticism up to the day of the final vote. So some board members hesitated to vote yes when they don't know what the final form of the books will be. and as for public criticism, my goodness, has there been public criticism from both the left and the right, and pretty much everywhere in between. A group called Truth in Texas Textbooks Coalition, led by Tea Partier and retired Lieutenant Colonel Roy White, submitted a 469-page report that complained about alleged instances of pro-Islam and anti-Christian bias. According to White, 5 million Texas school children will not learn the facts about Islam with these books. The over 500 battles fought in history to promote Islam, the killing of Jews, the lopping off of heads, none of that is talked about. Whereas, obviously, historically, Christians have been great to Jews. Anyway.
No kidding.
Yeah, others have had pretty much completely opposite concerns. I think, in fact, that some of the textbooks, because of complaints from Muslim groups, and so then this is the backlash to that. Academics who have reviewed the books have also expressed concerns, but, you know, what do academics know about education? For instance, at least one book suggests that Moses was a democratic leader who influenced the founding fathers and that of the U.S. and that the Ten Commandments were importantly influential to the writing of the U.S. Constitution. I believe there was actually a letter written by several, or signed by many academics, asking them, please, could you sort of dial back the Moses stuff? But as far as I know, the Moses stuff is still in. Climate change has also been a big problem, and a lot of the articles I've
not in Texas
seen the last couple of days have focused on the climate change issue. And again, they're getting it from both sides to some extent. A number of the textbooks originally, at any rate, had presented a false balance, using the for instance, using the conservative libertarian Heartland Institute to counter the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Some of the publishers, though, have already made changes to textbooks regarding climate change, although I believe not all. For instance, Pearson changed the sentence, "Scientists disagree about what is causing climate change," to "Scientists warn that climate change caused by this warming will pose challenges to society." And I suppose this is an improvement, but it seems to me they've gone from a flat-out wrong statement, again suggesting that scientists aren't agreed about this, to one that avoids the question of human influence entirely, which still seems to me to be problematic.
No more honest.
But there, huh?
It's no more honest.
Yeah, it seems to be. Although, I mean, it's hard to tell just based on one sentence.
Oh no, that never stops
but
me.
there's also
Seriously, judge the book by its cover. I'm cool with that.
But there is really been backlash about the changes made regarding climate change as well, that there are conservatives and libertarians who aren't happy about these seemingly comparatively mild changes. One thing, though, to keep in mind that's sort of interesting is that many of the board members who instituted the changes in the standards and in the curriculum that led to the changes in the textbooks have actually been voted out of office since 2010. So new members have to carry out the new standards while apparently realizing their weaknesses. I think both the Republican chair and Republican vice chair abstained yesterday, and the vice chair had expressed some reservations. On the other hand, it hasn't really changed. The board hasn't really changed that much. One publisher came a cropper yesterday when a witness informed the board that Cengage Learning, publisher of a 6th grade social studies textbook, mentioned the Common Core State Standards Initiative in supplemental materials on its website. Texas has rejected the...
Wow. Is what I was saying.
Texas has rejected the Common Core as having a liberal bias. I don't know how this book... I don't know how this book even got past anybody, said Tinsy Miller, a Dallas Republican. I'm not voting for anything that says Common Core. I can assure you of that. So there. At any rate, we'll find out on Friday exactly what the Texas School Board has wrought. People who don't live in Texas should also still be concerned. Traditionally, Texas, along with California, has had an undue influence on public school textbooks because of its enormous size. Publishers craft their books for Texas, but then market them heavily to other states. Now, this problem has actually decreased slightly with advances in digital publishing, so it's now easier for schools to get almost bespoke, custom-made books. But while the problem is still less severe, it is still a problem that Texas does still have undue influence over the country, not to the same degree that it used to, but it still does.
It's interesting that you've got Texas and California, where if you've seen the California textbooks, they tend to be on the other end of the spectrum. They're actually they tend to be pretty ultra liberal. In fact, the amount of discussion of Muslim of Islam actually is insane, and it's way beyond what I never even learned about it in school. But my kids, it was every year from elementary school.
So they do talk about all the beheadings and the wars?
No, they do not. They talk about it as a peaceful religion. It's part of the whole multicultural approach, I think.
Well, again, I think it's California has an influence, and possibly not to the extent Texas does, but just because it's so freaking big.
Yeah. So. Well, they have their own textbooks. I mean, everything's California math, California history, it's all got the state in it, in the name.
And what is... Bob, are you trying to be Brian?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Impersonating Brian.
So the final vote is Friday, so we won't quite know what's happening until then.
I don't have like a fedora.
Well, he's been wearing caps recently.
I like how you manufactured a pseudo brim there, but
Thank you. Thank you.
that was nice. All right.
So, I'm afraid we can see your screen way too easily.
I know. What is it?
He didn't say it was hard.
I didn't say it was hard. What is it?
It looks like a news sort of interviewee show.
Okay.
Well, that's good. Just blow it for the rest of the people.
Now everyone will
asked.
I know. I did ask.
It's your turn now, Bob, right?
Fine. I'll go. No.
Yeah.
All right. So you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, but we're distracted by the screen behind you.
So, the historical treatment of indigenous populations on this continent, in this hemisphere, has been historically abysmal. Land was taken, lots of land. Treaties were broken, lots of treaties. There have been real attempts to assimilate entire native populations into the colonizing Western European cultures, and that's when you're just not killing them wholesale, right? In the 19th century, for instance, there were any number of attempts on the part of whites to convert Indian children by putting them in religious-sponsored schools. Mandatory daily Western schooling often entailed putting kids in boarding schools in Canada, and in Canada lies our scene. And in these boarding schools, conditions could be really deadly, really high death rates, like 30% or more, it looks like. And while this move may have been well-intentioned, even if the mindset where this type of stuff could possibly be considered well-intentioned is hard to access, it would have had the practical effect of snuffing out cultures, basically. And these schools last until the 1960s, and things were so bad that they actually have in Canada a Indian Residential Schools Truth and Reconciliation Commission. If your school system needs to have a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, Texas, something is desperately wrong. In the last 20 years or so, it looks like that there have been a number of apologies from religious and governmental leaders, and there's been a move to recognize Indigenous rights in Canada. That's the background here. So let's go to last week, when a Canadian judge, if you could bring up the first slide of mine, Gethin Edward, who I believe is a member of the Six Nations, Judge Gethin Edward declined to intervene in the treatment of an 11-year-old girl from the First Nations who has a type of leukemia that's up to 95% curable with the standard treatment. Now, her parents were fighting for the right to treat her how they wanted to treat her. The family started with chemotherapy, but according to them, speaking for some reason in the third person to the Two Rose Times, quote, "A few months ago, the Haudenosaunee way of life was put on trial. The use of traditional medicines was brought into question by McMaster Children's Hospital when the child and family chose to discontinue chemotherapy. McMaster's, representing the interests of their patient, the child, sought to have the kid return to what in all probability would be curative therapy, albeit an unpleasant one, a 2-year regimen, in fact. But according to the mother, quote, "I will not have my daughter treated with poison. I've chosen treatment that will not compromise her well-being and quality of life." In his ruling, the now slightly less honorable than usual Gethin Edwards said, out loud, quote, "I cannot find that JJ is a child in need of protection when her substitute decision-maker has chosen to exercise her constitutionally protected right to pursue their traditional medicine over the applicant's stated course of treatment of chemotherapy." This seems to me to introduce some problems and complications. It sounds like in some ways someone's taking their eye off the ball about what's actually happening here. So the substitute decision maker, well, we'll get into that. This was seen as so declining to intervene gave a victory to the family who wanted to use alternative and native treatments to treat this leukemia. According to the CBC, outside the court, quote, Six Nations Chief Ava Hill and New Credit First Nations Chief Brian Laforme welcomed the ruling, says it has broader effects across Canada. New Credit First Nations sounds like a bank to me, but I don't know. And this is monumental, said Laforme. Quote, it reaffirms our right to be Indian and to practice our medicines in the traditional way. Well, it reaffirms everyone's right except the little girl's right to be an Indian, in my opinion. She's in all likelihood going to die for your rights. And I find it hard to pardon people who are going to use her life as a means of securing your own personal or your own political autonomy. I think that that's a little wrong. So what traditional treatments are being used? Well, the CBC did some investigation, and they found that the family went to a place called the Hippocrates Health Institute, a massage clinic in Florida. The director is this guy. If you could bring up the next one. Brian Clement. The CBC found that Clement had fake degrees from diploma mills, but still had the balls to say out loud, they didn't put it that way, they're candid, they're very nice, quote, "We've had more people reverse cancer than any institute in the history of healthcare. So when McGill fails or Toronto Hospital fails, they come to us, stage 4 cancer, and they reverse it," which makes me see red.
He has televangelist hair.
He has, well, I was kind of going for, like, he totally smells of Axe body spray, but, you know, televangelist. I was thinking he's going for Giorgio Tsoukalos, maybe? Something like that, I don't know. Healthcare, alien, you know, or a raccoon, right? So there's nothing remotely native about what this dipshit does. I looked up their comprehensive cancer health program, and it includes things like, and I'm not making this up, on-demand biofeedback sessions for stabilizing the emotional energy field. Just like they used to back on the reservation, huh? Quote, "stabilizing and strengthening the bioenergy field with specific integrative biophysics applications. Utilizing quantum nutrition to optimize physiology."
Quantum nutrition.
What? That's like the dumbest thing possible, almost. We're getting there.
Starve on quantum nutrition?
Are you breatharian, dude? Okay, so balancing hormones to upregulate cell communication signaling. Infrared waves plus oxygen. I want to finish that with, like, equals bullshit. But also, aqua chi ionic foot bath.
Is that aqua chi or aqua cheese?
Aqua chi. You could at least derive some health benefits from eating cheese.
Yeah.
Aqua chi ionic foot bath. I'm not sure what this one is. Targeted color puncture and aromatherapy. Is that colored lasers or something?
Yes.
I don't know. And then lastly...
No, I think it's a type of acupuncture, isn't it?
Targeted color puncture?
Yes. I believe
so.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised. And then this last one is my favorite. If you could bring up this is someone undergoing it, the next slide. It's regeneration medicine treatments. What I did there? I was funny. I made a nerd joke. The mother apparently wanted her daughter to get this treatment, quote, as soon as she was diagnosed. She knew about the clinic, quote, through a relative, but didn't have the money to go, said the CBC. After securing financial support from family, she called Clement from the hospital waiting room on the 10th day of chemotherapy. And this is a story that I've seen many times in other circumstances, as you may well know, people not able to afford transparently bogus treatment, and demanding the right to be taken advantage of, and it's upsetting. In this case, it's $18,000 for the treatment. In a video obtained by CBS News, they say, quote, Institute Director Bryant Clement says his institute teaches people to, quote, heal themselves from cancer by eating raw, organic vegetables and by having a positive attitude. And what you can do is take this and translate it from the bullshit to English with the phrase, let them die but pay me first. I'm, for couching this as an indigenous rights issue seems to me to be colossally disingenuous. I don't blame the parents very much. I don't think that they're qualified to take care of, make important decisions about another human being because they're really making objectively bad ones. But I do have nothing but contempt for this clinic, which is, as I think I said, a massage clinic. It's the type of massage clinic that does not have a happy ending.
I see what you did there, Bob.
Yeah. I think we all saw it coming from some distance away.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been following this story for some time, and the Florida massage guy coming into it was like, oh my God, can this get any worse?
No. Yeah, it's rather disturbing, this particular case. And the rejoicing, they say that it's going to have, I have no problem with these nations, having some sort of self-determination, but this is just a bad idea.
Right.
Just, but what happens a lot is that parents see what chemotherapy can do, that it is, because they went along with it for 10 days, then they saw their kid, who probably looked pretty good a couple days earlier, starting to get really sick, and they freaked out. And I think that happens a lot. And you have to know that, as unpleasant as it is, and even though, the course of treatment, it's 2 years. This is not insignificant. And they did make a point, well, what happens if you force the kid on this, and you have to take the kid away from the parents for 2 years? Well, okay. Maybe the parents should reconsider that. But
yeah,
I think that the judge made a really bad decision for this little girl. I don't know what it was for the larger community, but for this little girl, it's a bad decision. She's going to die because of it.
Well, I don't know if you read the discussion about the story on Doubtful News, but at least one person is saying the Canadian government just doesn't have jurisdiction, and it essentially was the only finding he could make. So I don't know about that, but
yeah, that could be. There are certain aspects of, in Native American stuff in the U.S. where the U.S. government can't intervene.
Yeah, I honestly, as I was going through this, I was thinking, I'm an Americanist, I should know more about this type of stuff. But it's a big gap in my education.
Yeah.
Go to Texas.
There's 2 kids involved now, aren't there?
Yeah, and the other one is relapsing and dying.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, how many kids does it take?
It's a bad story all around.
Really bad.
Honestly, I don't see this as any different than the questions of like Christian scientists.
No.
Christian Science advocates. I don't think it's. I think it shouldn't. Those questions of culture and so forth. It's no different than any other faith. If there's a child involved.
See, now this time it's Indians killing Indians, so it's better. No.
No, it's not. Yeah, I think if there's a child involved, I'm all for people making their own decisions. But when there's a child involved, it is up to the state to decide, if there's where the line is. And life is certainly on the other side of that line.
Yeah.
I mean, some people put it in terms of parental rights versus kids' rights, but you can't deny that the kid has rights, independent of the parents. In this country, you have, custodianship of a kid. You don't own them, right? They have their own.
And they're not able to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Within a judge has to decide if a child is able to make their own decisions. I mean, I remember a few years ago there was a 9-year-old who ran away from the treatment center because they were trying to avoid. They actually took off with him. I think it was the mother that took off with him. I can't remember. And they had to bring him back because they wanted to avoid the cancer treatments, and the kid would probably die without it.
Yeah.
It's just.
This isn't the first time quacks have swooped in to take advantage of these situations either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm convinced. At this point, this type of stuff that they're doing, this guy has fake degrees. This guy is no different than any other quack going back several hundred years.
I don't know. In some of the stories, it's come out that he apparently travels around quite a lot, and he traveled up there. They didn't go to Florida and seek him out. He traveled up to Canada and toured through their area, and that's how they found out about him. And then I saw a separate story where he had toured in Ireland and done the same thing, and then lured people to come to Florida from Ireland to get cancer treatment. is pretty ridiculous.
It's predatory.
Yeah,
Predatory behavior.
the perfect word for it. All right, Bob, way to send us out on a downer there.
Yep.
Let's see.
There's still book time.
If there's still book time to recover us. All right. Trivia. We only had one person, amazingly, who answered the trivia question, and it was right in the Q&A app. I think that's everybody saw it.
Whoops.
So they realized it had been answered, or at least anybody who was watching on Google Plus saw it. It was Alex Murdoch, and he was right in saying that it was the Bermuda Triangle. Charles Berlitz of the famous Berlitz language schools and Berlitz family and so on also wrote a set of books on the Bermuda Triangle. His book was the book that came up with the term the Bermuda Triangle. He also wrote, I would have also accepted Atlantis, because he wrote a lot about Atlantis, and he tied the two together in some of his writings.
Huh.
So,
And he was extremely inaccurate.
Yeah. But I always find it interesting, these folks that aren't just pure quacks, that have like a real thing that they did that was admirable, and then they got into crazy stuff. Like the guy, there's, what was it? Oh, the guy who, the creator of Wonder Woman, also created a lie detector.
Yeah, yeah.
A polygraph, and stuff like that.
And Charles Mackay, who wrote a favorite book of Skeptics, also had some crazy-ass linguistic theories.
Oh, yeah? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have to get Daniel Loxton on that. He loves Charles Mackay. Okay, where are we? What do we got left? Now everybody get their book ready.
What about the thing that was showing behind me?
Oh yeah, what was the thing? It's blackness now.
Well, it's over now.
I didn't see anybody who answered it.
Yeah.
Leslie Stahl.
It was Leslie Stahl, so it was 60 minutes.
Yeah, it looked like 60 minutes.
It was a report about false memory that appeared on 60 Minutes about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, that's what you remember it being, but
it was probably something else entirely.
It was actually an episode of Cheers.
It was actually about Satanism.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, Elizabeth Loftus shows up in it later on.
Of course. She's the expert. Do we have any announcements? Anybody got any blog posts? No skepticality this week? Things have been kind of quiet. I had a blog post, but I talked about it in this show. The TAM date was announced last week. No real details, but the date for TAM 2015 was announced. It's July 16th through 19th, so 1 week later than it normally is. It's normally, the last couple of years, it's been the week after July 4th weekend. It's the 2 weeks after next year. But I have a link in the show notes. It's actually already there to a list of all the 2015 conferences that I've been able to find dates for. So QED is coming up. They've got a great show in Manchester. They're still selling tickets for that. Nexus hasn't announced details yet, but they have told me their dates. They're on April 9th through 12th in New York, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. SkepCon in Germany, and CFI is having a big event next year called Reason for Change up at their headquarters in Amherst. That's in June. So that's all those things are listed. Pretty much all the big giant ones have announced their dates, except for the ones that are really, really late in the year. So if you're interested in going to a conference in 2015, check it out. Make your vacation plans. Who's got a book?
I have a book.
All right, Barb, go.
The most eye-catching religious development of the late 20th century was the revival of fire and brimstone Calvinism known as the Christian Right. But while its foremost representatives, televangelists Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, hurled denunciations at sinners like gays and feminists and predicted the imminent end of the world, A friendlier approach was steadily gaining ground, positive thinking disguised now as Christianity. Calvinism and positive thinking had last squared off in the 19th century when positive thinking was still known as New Thought. And they did so again near the turn of the 21st century, not in public clashes, but in a quiet fight for market share, television audiences, book sales, and ever-growing congregations. Promulgated from the pulpit, the message of positive thinking reached white-collar suburbanites who had so far encountered it only at work, as well as millions of low-wage and blue-collar people who had not yet encountered it at all.
All right, who's next?
I'll go. This spell is specifically designed to safeguard your assets against legal action. You will need 7 dried beans, a crossroads. When your familiar is comfortably settled, seat yourself beside him and put 7...
That's not how you do that.
7 dried beans in your mouth. Spit the beans out while speaking the name of the entity or person who is threatening legal action against you. Pick up the beans and drop them onto your cat, saying, "Beloved cat, I have spat out the beans, and will keep what is mine by honest means." Using your fingers, remove the beans from your cat, or pick up your cat so the beans fall to the floor. Take the beans to a crossroads and throw them over your left shoulder without looking backwards. There's more.
Wow.
That's enough.
Bob?
Right. In April of 1981, Mineral Point police officer John Pepper was on evening patrol when he passed by Graceland Cemetery. Mr. Pepper noticed, this was while he was still in medical school. No. Mr. Pepper noticed what he said was a very tall, extremely pale, thin, Dracula-looking vampire wearing a black trench coat. Mr. Pepper gave chase to the vampire, only to witness it easily hurdle a large fence. It was then that Mr. Pepper lost sight of the vampire. Police did a search for the vampire, believing it was an April Fool's joke, yet they were unable to find it.
Dum dum dum.
Dun dun dun. All right, and I'm up. In their 2014 book, American Conspiracy Theories, the political scientists Joseph Usinski and Joseph Parent conducted an extensive empirical study on conspiracy theories and found that conspiracy theorists are often caricatured as a small demographic composed primarily of middle-aged white male internet enthusiasts who live in their mother's basements. But that polls reveal that conspiracy theories permeate all parts of American society and cut across gender, age, race, income, political affiliation, educational level, and occupational status. They note that in laboratory experiments, researchers have found that inducing anxiety or loss of control triggers respondents to see non-existent patterns and evoke conspiratorial explanations, and that in the real world there is evidence that disasters, such as earthquakes and other high-stress situations, such as job uncertainty, prompt people to concoct, embrace, and repeat conspiracy theories.
Interesting.
Barb, what was yours?
Bright-sided, how the relentless promotion of positive thinking has undermined America.
By Barbara Ehrenreich.
Yeah. Oops. I changed. Sorry. That was the cover.
Familiar with the title. Yep. Who was next? Eve?
Yes, The Good Cat Spellbook by Gillian Kemp.
Obviously.
Once was
Totally
reviewed by
fact-based
Skeptical Humanities by my cat.
Bob?
Mine was the story, The Mineral Point Vampire, from the book The Wisconsin Road Guide to Haunted Locations. Turns out, probably wasn't a vampire. Spoilers!
Spoiler alert, Bob. Mine was from this little booklet, Conspiracy Theories, that was put out by the Skeptics Society. And I got one in the mail, so I thought I would read from it. And it's got a nice little rundown of conspiracy theories.
Why don't I have one?
I don't know. You're not nice to Daniel Loxton.
I know. He had to come in, the stupid shepherd.
I have one.
I think we're done. Are we done? Anything else? Any questions? I don't see any Q&A. I don't see anybody on YouTube. I think we're done.
Hooray!
Hooray!
Time for dancing.
Time for dancing. Yeah. Let me get the music queued up. And my outro stuff. And we really need a producer for this show that's separate from the host, because it's too much work.
Well, if you and Brian were on the same show,
Yeah.
maybe you could do one while the other.
Yeah, well, that's normally why Brian's here. Yep. Okay.
Should I just start dancing now?
All right. Here we go. The Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of What'sTheHarm.net, Skeptical Humanities, Brian Gregory, ICBS Anywhere, Everywhere, and Doubtful News. Our logo was designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com. Our theme music is by Musicant and is used with permission.